Okay, Gavalda, good morning. Sorry we're starting a little bit late this morning. Thank you to everybody for coming, for joining us for the beginning of a brand new lesson. As we went probably a little bit too quickly yesterday over the last bit, and so, kedai to go back and review if you can. But it's important, I think, to start a new lesson on a new day, and not to have it mixed. And so I felt like that was enough of that. And so here we're going to jump into something brand new, which is Torah Yud Ches. Be'ezras Hashem, this morning's shir is sponsored by Deborah Jacobi in honor of her beloved father Ari Ben Shlomo, blessed memory, and also Be'ezras Hashem is a schus for the Refuah Shalem. What a terrible, tragic story yesterday for Tinuk Ben Salah. Kadosh Baruch Hu should look after this baby. Be'ezras Hashem. I also want to just read to you something from one of our chevra, not here, somebody who's in Eretz Yisrael, who gave me permission to share this story, just because you never know. You just never know. We were saying before, the power of words. So he sends me this message. He says, I want to share a nice story. Just finished Torah Daled with the Amud Yomi shir, because a lot of people are listening from the beginning. I always recommend people go back to the beginning if they can, unless they're mamish, trying to join us with the Zoom. Otherwise, better to see it from the very, very beginning, if you're not here in person, obviously. So he said, he's doing Torah Daled with the Amud Yomi shir. He said, I started to say to myself, every time anything looks like it wasn't going my way, I would say Baruch Atah v'Ametiv, right? Like we had learned in that shir, that a person shouldn't really see a difference between the good things and the bad things, that it's all from Hashem, and Zoy Sabachina Me'in Adam Haba, like we learned. So he said, I listen to the shir by the Kosel every day. Chaz Hashem, so a certain part of me at least is by the Kosel in some sense. And I usually walk from Ramat Eshkol, and this week I got terrible blisters on the bottom of my feet, and I said to myself, Baruch Atah v'Ametiv. And then today, because of my blisters, I decided to take a rest and let it heal and not walk to the Kosel. And I stayed home, and my wife was doing laundry, and my 10-month-old daughter ate a Tide Pod, like one of those things that you put into the wash. And my wife panicked, and because I was home, because of the blisters that looked like it was a bad thing, I was able to call Hatzalah right away and go to the hospital. Baruch Hashem, now my daughter is fine, sleeping at home. But I got to see clearly how everything Hashem does is rachamim, and since learning Torah Daled, I have a whole different mindset. Unbelievable. So you never know. We don't know anything. The whole thing's a total mystery. So I just wanted to share that. Pesiyata Shmaya, we're going to jump into Torah Yud Ches. Torah Yud Ches is extraordinarily deep. It's not that long. It's the last, I know this was a pretty short segment of the Mishta'e Gemaras, so we had 3 Gemaras on this part of the Agadah of Mishta'e, and then Be'ezras Hashem, the next 3 Torahs until Chav Beis are from Sefer Ditzniusa, as a part of the Zohar Kodesh, which we'll speak about, and that basically concludes the ordered part of Likutei Moharan. So the first 22 Torahs is Rabbi Chana, Mishta'e, and then Sefer Ditzniusa, and then after that it's open waters. After that it's just like sort of quote-unquote random from all over the Torah, different headlines and different topics and different things. Not of lesser quality, if anything, the same at least, if not more. But that's the order. I was just thinking over Shabbos, maybe it's kedai for some of the chavra to try to contemplate, 22 teachings that start off Likutei Moharan before it just sort of launches it and releases it into Kala Torah Kula. L'chayra, it has something to do with the 22 letters of the Aleph base. How could it not? And so if there's a way that we could think, up until Yud Aleph, it's mamish the letters of the Aleph base. So Yud Aleph would be Chaf, Yud Beis would be Lamed, and so on and so forth, to try to think of Ramazah, and Ali likes that kind of thing. So just Tahara. But let's jump in. We're going to do our best with it. It's very, very deep. Very, very deep. And we'll try to move through it bit by bit. It's a fascinating teaching. So here we begin, B'siyata D'Shmaya. Torah Yud Ches, he begins with the Agadita from the Mishta'e. And he writes, Rabbi Yochanan Mishta'e, the Gemara says in Baba Basra, Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yonasan Mishta'e. Rabbi Yonasan recounted the following story. Zimna Chada Havikozlina B'Svinta. One time we were traveling on a boat, B'Chazina Nuhu Kartalisa, and we saw a box, a chest. Dahainu Mikbe'e Bey, Dahavu Mikbe'e Bey, Avanim Toivos Amagolias. That embedded into this chest, right, it was like encrusted in all kinds of beautiful jewels and shining diamonds. V'hadrele mini d'chavre demikre birsha, and it was being surrounded by a particular kind of fish that's called a birsha fish. Naches bar meroy la'asuye. We sent down a diver to retrieve it, to bring it back. Uregash. Uboy de nishmete la'amte. And he started to feel that he's being attacked. That they're trying to cut off that one of the fish is trying to cut off his leg, cut off his thigh. It was rakzika de chalo nechas, and he threw like a jug of vinegar at it, and it let it went away, nechas, and it stopped. Nafak braskala, and then out came a baskal, which is going to be very important. This baskal Rabbi Nachman is going to speak about toward the end of the lesson. Va'amar, and it said, "What are you doing? Mai isluchu bahadi kartalisa de devisu de Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa. What do you have with this chest? This chest belongs to the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa. And it will be the source of tcheles that is going to be benefited from by the tzaddikim in the world to come." Most mysterious Gemara in the world, right? Chest and diamonds and fish and a thigh and Rechanina ben Doisa's wife and tcheles and a baskal. What's going on over here? So here the Rebbe explains. Lashon Rabbeinu Zechana Devracha. Let's see the Rashbam first quickly. Kartalisa is an argois. It's a chest or a box. Demikir Birsha Kach Shemoy. That was the name of the fish. Bar Maroi Adam Sheyadei Lashut B'Mayim. They sent down a bar Amoirai. I'm not exactly sure why this word is used for a diver, but this is what the Rashbam says. Adam sheodea. It's a human who knows lashut pamayim, to go down in the water. The fish was trying to cut off his leg rather. Zrak lechala. He threw chaymetz. He threw vinegar. Ubarach merecha liyam, and he went and he ran away because of the smell of the vinegar. The fish went down into the depth of the ocean. It left him alone. It is hidden away for the tzaddikim la'asad lavai, and from there is going to come tcheles. Okay, this is the mysterious Gemara. Lashon Rabbeinu Zechana Devracha. The following teaching is from Rabbi Nachman's his own words. Many of the others that don't begin with Lashon Rabbeinu, just to review again, the words are the words of Rabbi Nassan, right? And still every single thing was reviewed by Rabbi Nachman and approved by Rabbi Nachman. So it's not like some are authentic, some are inauthentic, chas v'shalom, but these are extra kedusha. These are, he was mechaben Bidiuk, every single word, not only every word like we said earlier in the series, but every letter, so much so that there's a lesson in the middle of Likutei Moharan where the sentence leaves off, the middle of the sentence. Now Rabbi Nassan says that Rabbi Nachman has a cheshbon with exactly how many letters are needed for whatever he's drawing down and whatever mystical calculations he has, and there were too many letters, and so he erased it. Like, it was more about the mystical tikkun than it was about comprehensibility, because he can't understand it. The sentence just ends. Rabbi Nassan's like, yeah, he erased a couple letters. Just to give you, we have no idea what we're learning. There's no sefer like this on the planet. We just have to appreciate this. Unbelievable. Okay, so let's jump in Misiyata D'Shmaya. I would really like maybe one point in my life to just commit myself completely to Likutei Moharan, and really just pick one thing and this is my sefer. I don't know why I'm doing other things, Anyway, just a little chizuk for myself. All right, here we go. Yisrael asher b'cha espaer. All right, b'cha, beautiful. So who knows? Maybe I'll do that one day. Stay tuned. Okay, so here we jump in. Da says the Heilige Rebbe Schusi. Every single thing has a tachlis. Everything in creation has a purpose. Tachlis ish oy tachlis acher, and to that tachlis, there's another tachlis. Something has there's a why, but then you can always ask why on that why, as the Rebbe is going to explain. Gavoya ma'al gavoya, and it goes higher and higher and higher. And what he means by higher is not physically higher, obviously, right? He means conceptually and philosophically higher from the standpoint of deeper. It's okay, from the standpoint of deeper and deeper and deeper, right? Philosophically, it goes in and in and in. And what does he mean? Lamashal, for example, tachlis bin in a bayis. A person wants to build a house. Why does he want to build a house? So that he should have a place to live. Okay, fine, cool. So that's why. But why does he want a place to live? Why does he want to rest? Right? So the tachlis hamenucha is kadesh yuchal. Hopefully, if a person's in a super high consciousness, or Rabbi Nachman doesn't see any other option, kadesh yuchal b'kayach hazel avodas Hashem. Obviously, so the person should be able to serve God with peace of mind. Why else would a person want a house? That to Rabbi Nachman, that's why you have a place to live, so you can sleep, so you can get up, and you can serve God, like we're doing right now. Baruch Hashem. What else is there to do in this world? This is why we're alive. Okay, so then you could ask another question. V'tachlis havoida, so then you can say, but why does he want to serve Hashem? And so on, and so on, and so on. Until ultimately, if you really want to know, ultimately you just say, I don't know. And therefore the core of everything is we don't know. Because ultimately, once you bring it back to that, so then you can give some kind of answer, right? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has nachas ruach from us when we serve Him. We want to give HaKadosh Baruch Hu nachas ruach, or we want to reveal Hashem's presence in the world. Why? Eventually you're going to get to a point where we have no idea. And this is very deep, bound up to the concept of the sphera of Keser, which is the first of the 10 spheros, which, if seen as steps in a creative process, Keser is the motivation for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Keser is the why, right? It's step one. It comes even before Chacham and Bina, meaning even before HaKadosh Baruch Hu begins to plan the world in a big picture way, or even before he begins to look at the details of the world in a more specific and contained way. On top of that is Keser. And Keser is the motivation that kicks off the entire process. But one thing we know about Keser from the pasuk that describes Chachma as ha-Chachma me'ayin timatzeh. So it's not a question, where does Chachma come from? The Mikubalim saw that as a statement. Chachma, meaning the sphere of Chachma, emerges me'ayin timatzeh. It comes out of Keser. What's Keser referenced by in the pasuk? The word ayin. Ayin means nothingness. We have no idea what Keser is. In the letters of Yud K Vav K, where all the spheres are in there, the last letter being Malchus, the Vav being the 6 spheros, right, from Chesed down to Yesod, the first He being the sphere of Bina, and the Yud being Chachma. Where's Keser? Just the little Kutza de Eis Yud, the little tip of the letter Yud, which has no communicability. It doesn't say anything. If you just see that on a piece of paper, it's nothing. It's not a sound. It's not a vowel. It's nothing. Why? Because Keser comes from that place which is totally and completely beyond, which aligns with this, that the ultimate probing of all of our philosophical questions and asking why and why and why and why and why will bring you to a point of Keser, because Keser is the ultimate motivator, and that is completely unfathomable to us. We don't know what is in Keser. Keser is totally beyond us. Lahavdil, there's an interesting video, famous video, I think, on YouTube, by actually a Jewish scientist, physicist, I believe, called Richard Feynman. If you ever saw this video, and the video is called Why. And basically he goes through this incredibly deep thing about how every why you can keep on probing until it will bring you into. And basically the idea is, and this is stam incredible, to see the way that Keser, as the most fundamental sphere, literally underlies everything, even the most remote and mundane and detached and simple aspect of the world, is that basically if you ask why enough about anything, it will bring you into Keser. Right? So just pick anything, mamish anything. Why am I wearing glasses on my face? Right? Because I need to see, or there are a number of ways that you can go with it, right? My eyes aren't working so well. Why? I could find some medical reason as to why my eyes don't work so well. Why do you need your eyes to work? Because I'd like to see things. Why would you like to see things? Because I want to function in this world. Why do you want to function in this world? And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're like in, existential territory. Like you're a philosopher all of a sudden because he asked me why I wear glasses. But this is how it works in this world, because every malchus is connected to Keser, and it brings you back up to the ultimate why. And that's what Rabbi Nachman is saying over here. Gevoya ma'al gevoya. It'll go up and up and up and up and up and up. Now, the tachlis shall kol davar, the ultimate why of everything, it is closer to the ultimate motivation, and that's why it's gevoya me'al gevoya. It is more interior, it is deeper, it's the real motivation, klape, in relation to the why that came before it. Right? So I'll give you another example. I think I've mentioned this maybe in this context, in these SHIURIM, elsewhere. A very powerful exercise. And so actually, we're going to get to that as well. This Torah is so deep. Torah Yechaz. If you see a person who's building a table, and you say, why is this person building a table? So on one level, he wants a table. But then you notice that he has a table already. So why does he want a table? Right? And you say, I think we went through this, right? I think we did this, and we'll do it again. Why does he want to build a table? Because he wants to sell a table. So then you say, oh, he doesn't actually want a table, he wants money. You see? And so then you ask, okay, but why does he want money? So maybe you'll say social status. Let's say in a deep way. He wants to have what he needs, sure. But maybe he has what he needs. So let's say he's building millions of tables. Why? He doesn't need them, so he needs money. Why does he want money? Social status. Why does he want social status? Because he wants to feel like he matters. So all of a sudden, now you took another layer off the onion. And now you ask me, which one is more essential or closer to the truth? That he wants money or that he wants self-esteem? And of course, it's the latter, that he wants self-esteem. The more that you probe and go deeper and deeper and deeper, you start to understand. Right, exactly. So now you look at it, how we thought in the beginning, oh, that guy wants a table. Maybe Bechlal doesn't want a table. Oh, deeper, he wants money. Doesn't want money either. That's not the tachlis of it. Every single thing has a tachlis. The tachlis brings you deeper and deeper and deeper to the essential truth of what's really going on. And so Rabbi Nachman is giving us a technology, like a technique, as to how to discover the essence of existence by probing with this question, why, and being tachlis minded. Maybe it's the most favorite word in Breslov, tachlis. That's all they talk about. Breslovers get together. How are you doing with the tachlis? Tachlis. What's the tachlis? There's nothing in between. I told you this already. There's nothing that isn't. It's got to be the thing, like the essence of the essence of the essence of the other. Hopefully, ideally, that's the way that it is in Breslov. Tachlis. So the Rebbe says, "V'tachlis shall kol davar hu mechubar la'machshava v'aseichel yoser me'adavar shazeh tachlis ba mimenu." It's closer to the real, authentic intention. And tachlis hamachshava is even closer than the thing itself, because that's mamish buried into the person, to the consciousness that's experiencing this thing. Ki soif maseh is b'machshava tchila. Ultimately, there's a way to discover that the eventual, right, meaning the eventual tachlis, which is the soif maseh, what he really wanted out of this thing, is exactly aligned with the machshava tchila. And that reflects the machshava tchila. If I can discover what Rabbi Nachman is calling in this context the soif maseh of a thing, which is the ultimate tachlis of the tachlis of the tachlis of the tachlis, and that's called soif maseh, that's reflective of machshava tchila. These two things are reflective of the other. Nimtza, it emerges. Sha'asof va'atachlis hu tchila b'machshava v'karev la. That the ultimate end, right, meaning when we ask, but why, which is, in a certain sense, further away from the simple building of the table, because I'm probing into the soif maseh. What I see in building a table or building a house is the maaseh. When I ask, but why, that's bringing you deeply into the maaseh. When I get to the ultimate soif maseh, I've discovered the machshava tchila. That was the original intention, sometimes even subconsciously. If I'm able to really probe, you sit in the therapist chair, they starting to take apart. What are your actual feelings? It might even be things that we're not even aware of. In our subconscious, we're being motivated by different subconscious elements, things in our past, different aspects of our personality that were shaped by different experiences and so on. Deep. That's the rachis machshava tchilas machshava v'karev lo u'me'atachlis nishtal shel ma'isa, and from there comes the ma'isa. L'mashal brings another mashal. Kisha'olah b'machshava livnos lebayis. When a person decides to build a house, bevadei abayis ein enuda b'bas achas. Maybe one day it'll be like this. You just have a thought and boom, the house is there. It's you never know. We're moving into wild territory. But imagine if that happens. A person wants to build a house. Good morning, Jeremy. A person wants to build a house and they think for himself, I want a house. But the house doesn't just appear. Right? The house is not like all of a sudden now there's a house because a person thought that he wanted a house. That's called eitz ve'etz lefi tzarkai. First, the person has to get all the wood. Let's say he's building a log cabin. He needs to find all the wood, and then he needs to measure, and he needs to cut, and he needs to put all the different pieces of the wood together until he has a house. And then maybe, in our day and age, he'll put in electricity, he'll put in plumbing, he'll put in, insulation, all the things that a person needs for a house. Nimtza, it emerges that the ultimate completion of the bayis, which is like the house in its completed state, serving its purpose, was originally embedded in the earliest motivation of this person. What did he want? He wanted a built house. Why did he want to build a built house? So it should serve the purpose for which his deep intention actually wanted. Not just the thought, I want a house. Just like that person that we mentioned earlier has a thought, I want to build a table. He doesn't want to build a table, right? He wants self-esteem. But it all goes back to the Reishis HaMachshava, where the person's original thought is the thing in its totality, in its completion. Then that thought is nistalic, which is very, very deep Kabbalistically. It's nistalic, and then we go through all the different steps to bring it, sort of to that place. But originally, the first thing that is in the mind, the Reishis, right, the Machshava Tchila, is the completed thing. Then there are steps and steps and steps, and then here we go. Here's the thing. So that's the sof masa of the thing that's already completed in its totality, is reflective of actually the machshava tchila deep in a person's mind. Nimtzad emerges shahatachlis hu karav lemachshava b'yoser me'aschalas hamaisa. Right, that the ultimate tachlis, which is even before anything is created, is closer to the final act than even the building process, where there's like a house in the world. Like it's because it already existed in the mind. And the Rebbe is saying that not only did it exist in the mind, but if you take it back, the why and the why and the why and the why, the ultimate, maybe even subconscious motivation that a person had in order to envision a house, it's already there in the beginning. And the deepest tachlis is reflective of the earliest machshava. And if a person, that's what we're going to learn, if a person wants to live in a world of meaning, because the world, like we just said, could have many layers of meaning. On the one hand, the world is just the world. If you probe a little bit deeper, but why? So then we can get into all different shades, different layers, different levels of meaning in the world. But if a person wants to mamish live in a world that's reflecting the machshava tchila, a person has to go to the ultimate why. Bezras Hashem, I'm going to give a shir a little bit later this morning. By 11:30, I will have given 3 shiurim, and I'll probably go back to bed. I'm kidding. But a busy morning, Baruch Hashem. I'm speaking at Torah Way in preparation for Lag BaOmer. If anybody's around, it'll be at 8:30. A very, very important piece that I've never taught before from Adar Bamarim, which I'm not going to give the whole thing away because you have to really see it inside. It's fascinating from the Ramchal. But the Adar Bamarim writes very simply, that the whole Galus is the side of chitzonius and not pnimius. That's all it is. Galus means chitzonius. Galus, he says, means that Klal Yisrael are drawing from the outside and not the inside. And this is why the Geula depends on Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because Rashbi is the inside. That's it. That's the whole pitaron. That's the whole solution for all of our problems. Our issues is that we're only connecting to chitzonius as spheres, and through the Torah of Rabbi Shimon, we start to draw from the pnimius. That's the whole thing. He says it super clear. That's it. Very simple. It really is that simple. It really, really is that simple. If a person wants to live in a world that's redeemed, so then we have to be accessing the pnimius of the machshava. And not just sufficing with some layer of it, but to get into the deepest part, which ultimately, in the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov is Ani l'doidi v'doidi li. It's just we give HaKadosh Baruch Hu something. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us something. We share a relationship. And then if a person abides in a realm where they're plugged into that layer of the why, so then that's machshava tchila. That then you're living already in an olam habadik way, which we're going to learn.
And living, that's in Passoyer Chai.
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 Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. They're all Chai. All right, the Baal Shem Tov is Chai Elul. Rabbi Nachman is Chai Tishrei. Unbelievable. So the Heilige Rebbe nice base. Vida, and a person should know. Shahatachla shel abriya hu shashua olam haba. The tachlis of the Bria, like I just mentioned, is the delights of Olam Haba, which we've learned, and it's not random, that this Yid was just up in Torah Daled, like we began the Shir, and then he had that thing, and then I said that because that's all that we had learned about Shashui Olam Haba, and that was in Torah Daled, where the Rebbe said when a person lives in such a way where they realize that it's all love, that it's all love, we have to mamish, we have to excavate within our deep hashkafic psyche and get everything else out, and in this dar just replace it with love. Speaking to an individual the other day, and it's like a reprogramming. Like, it's not their fault, So all of us are like that. Everything in his mind goes back to Musar and Hashem hates you and whatever, and this is how he's programmed. And I'm trying to convince him. There's a whole. I said, I don't believe in that God. I just don't believe in that. That's not part of my faith. He said, what do you mean? He said, everything I learned in any of the sefarim, it just brings me back to this. Is there anything you can do? I said, yeah, really. And we sat and we opened up to Likutei Moharan Amud Ches and Tinyana, and boom, Rabbi Nachman begins. If anybody didn't see that lesson, it's like if a person needs, what's it called? Like a person has a heart attack, the defibrillator, is that what it's called? Like, the shock thing to bring them back to life, like that's Torah Amud Ches. Rabbi Nachman says, when a person begins to serve Hashem, he will experience being pushed away. He'll experience himself being pushed away. And the Rebbe says, and kol ha'israchos hu rak kula yiskarvos. Every experience that he has of being pushed away is actually Hashem bringing him close. And Mamish, he had tears in his eyes. I have tears in my eyes. Like the penny drop. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And I witnessed it in real time. And I told him to pause because he was just reading the whole thing. He's like, he was devouring it. I said, wait. I looked him in the eyes. I said, did you ever hear anything like this in your life? Did you ever read it? He said, no. He's not the youngest person. He's seen a lot. No. Psh. Unbelievable. So we have to mamash replace it with Ava. Like that Shashui Olam Haba. If we can finally begin to actually fathom how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. It sounds trite, and it sounds like cliche, because today it's already a slogan. But it's not a slogan. It's really not a slogan. The reason things are slogans and like on Hallmark cards is because they're so true that they became cultural cliches, but they're so true. And if it's the right moment for a person to actually feel this way and to really chap, like, Hashem actually adores me, but really, and he respects me and he believes, and not just me, I'm saying all of us, I'm just saying me, but each and every one of us, for a person to say that, oh my goodness, to wake up to that, I can get rid of all the shtiyot that I have from Galus, I'm waking up. We're waking up to a brand new way of existing, where everything that happens to me, the Rabbi Nachman said in Torah Daled, Kishadam Yodea Shekol Ma'iraisav Him L'Tavasai Zoysav B'Chinam Ein Olam Haba. That every single thing is for my good. What kind of being is giving that everything that happens to me should be for the good? Must be someone who loves me a ferocious amount, an incredible amount. Shekol Ma'iraisav Him L'Tavasai, says the Rebbe, Zoysav B'Chinam Ein Olam Haba. There's no greater paradise than that. And it doesn't mean that everything in life will work out. But it means that everything in life is working out. But a person has to get to that level of consciousness, and it doesn't go away when all of a sudden a person hits a Yerida. No, that's when the teachings become the most relevant. That's what Rabbi Nachman was talking about. And we can maintain that consciousness. So says the Rebbe, this is the Tachlis Shel HaBriya. This is the purpose of the whole creation of Shashui Olam Haba. But the Rebbe says people are already brainwashed so much. So much. See, he says, it's so hard to convince people of this. I spoke about that a little yesterday too. Because about this tachlis, the pasuk Yeshayahu says, it's unfathomable to us to be able to live in that way in Olam Hazeh. We can't grasp it. Nobody has grasped it. And then the Rebbe says a huge chiddush, but the true tzaddikim, they can actually understand and in some sense grasp the proper Osla Chachma says not mamish, because Chazal literally say on this pasuk that they can't, right? So nobody can. So it doesn't. Rabbi Nachman is not going against Chazal, but he's saying in some sense they have some grasp, and therefore v'chol echad v'echad miYisrael, each and every member of Klal Yisrael, Lefi sharshay sheyesh le b'soich nishmas hatzadik, in as much as they are connected to the tzaddik, which all of us Baruch Hashem are. Kain mekabel mimenu gam zekain zois hatachlis. There are channels that are opened up, and they are able to begin to intuit a little bit, even if they can't articulate it or express it. But they have this feeling because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending messages of health and hope and clarity that are, it's just life-giving, mamish life-giving. But there's one condition, and the condition to being able to receive this consciousness is kefi hafaras hakas berachmanos, is for the human being to trigger, as we're going to learn, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midos, so that kas becomes replaced with rachmanos, which we're going to explore what that is. How? By a person themselves swapping out anger for compassion. Hainu, meaning kisha ba adam leklal kas, a person wants to get angry, lo yifal bekas shum achzarias. Not only should they not act out with their anger, right, and be cruel or rude or anything chas v'shalom like that, but on the contrary, they have an opportunity now, and we're going to discuss what this means in a minute, yamtik hakas brachmanos, to sweeten the anger with compassion. Bebechinas, and the aspect which we say in Tachlim beroiges rachim tiskar. In your anger, please remember mercy. What does this all mean? Well, listen to this, because it's so deep. It's so deep and it's so messianic. It really is. There's no other word for it. Oh my goodness! Somebody sent me the most remarkable project yesterday. Once when I get involved, I have to think a little bit more about it, but it blew my mind. It's a Lubavitcher project that apparently, I don't even know if Lubavitchers know about this, maybe you guys do, but apparently the Rebbe at one point approved architectural designs. You know about this? For Mashiach's palace. Ever heard about this? Armoina Shel Mashiach. He had an architect draw up plans for to build Mashiach's palace, because we can't build a Beis HaMikdash. Different machlokes Rishonim about Mashiach's, the third Beis HaMikdash will come from the sky, or we're going to build it in Ma'aseh Yadenu, or maybe it's a gift from Hashem. But the palace of Mashiach, he's got to have a place to function. Like, why should all the kings have palaces and he doesn't have a palace? So he's trying to raise like $10 million now to build Mashiach's palace. Like, that Klal Yisrael should do something. They have a plot of land in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe said exactly where it's supposed to be, and to express our practical. Everybody talks about Mashiach. Put your money where your mouth is. So contribute to Mashiach's palace.
It's interesting that it was a no. And all of a sudden the Rebbe said,
"That's right. Right.
Where are the plans?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know."
Pitom.
It's like, okay, it's time.
Yeah, that's right. And apparently, because he sent me a little bit of a brochure, they're putting it together. And Mama's putting it together with a whole mock-up of this gorgeous palace. Like they're serious about it. And the architect who drew up the plans said that he felt that it wasn't him drawing the plans. He said the pen just wrote by itself. Just unbelievable. So, but it was like, wow, look at where we are in history. Like, these are the conversations. Yerushalayim is ours. We have we own a plot of land. Like, we can actually build. I'm telling you, Chaver, we take it for granted because we're living in it. So we don't chap. We're in it. We're living the visions of the prophets. We are literally coming to the end, to the end, to the end, to the end, to the end. Wow. This is the conversations on social media, we're like building the palace of Mashiach. So what I'm about to say now aligns very deeply with that messianic spirit, because I believe that everything is connected, because if you really believe in Hashem, then everything is one. So the technological revolution is one, the psychological revolution is one. All these things that are happening in tandem one with the other. They have to be connected. So if we think about, let's talk about the psychological revolution very quickly for a minute. What's the big chiddush of the psychological revolution? In all of its various forms, from relatively recently, Freud and a couple of other chevra, not a long time, the father of modern psychology. This is not, maybe William James a little bit earlier, 100 years earlier. We're not talking so long ago. that this new inyan of like the study of the human soul, I guess, the study of the human psyche, the study of what's going on inside a human, has basically availed us the fundamental principle that I would say what it really falls under, the general rubric, even though it's much more precise, is that hurt people hurt people. Like that's the general insight that's come out of modern psychology, that if a person is acting in a certain way, it's usually not because they're bad, right? Which is, I would say, for most of history, how we viewed people. Oh, he's a bad guy. No, it's not because he's bad, but because he is hurt. That's, I would say, that maybe the fundamental insight. And that's the premise for psychology. You sit with a person who is able to non-judgmentally hold a space and help you work through what's going on, based on the premise that you don't actually want to live this way. You don't actually want to hurt yourself, to hurt others, and so that you are hurting. So let's sit with you and let's work this out. To me, this approach is captured in these three words: Beroiges, Rachim Tiskar. Beroiges Rachim Tiskar doesn't mean Ribbono D'Al Makoila that instead of getting angry, please don't be angry, have compassion. Meaning, please have compassion, don't get angry with us. Doesn't mean that. That's how we think on a surface level. If you translate, you say Beroiges, meaning instead of getting angry, or Beroiges when you're going to be angry, so Rachim Tiskar, be merachim on us and don't be angry with us. That's Pashut Pshat. But I'll be Pnimius HaTorah, what we're actually saying, Ribbono Shel Olam, look at how we're behaving, and you have one of two reactions to how we're behaving. Either you can be angry with us, and that's Roiges, or not, please be compassionate and don't be angry. Instead of being angry, as a direct reaction to the way that we're behaving, recognize that we're just doing it because we're so hurt. And because we're seeking connection, and we're seeking stability, and we're seeking, something to numb the pain, etc., 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 and therefore Rachim Tiskar. You hear the difference? It's very, 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 very nuanced. But instead of being angry, not be compassionate and don't get angry, respond to us. No, do respond to us with compassion. Because the way that we're acting could theoretically activate or trigger one of two reactions. Either you could be angry at us, or you could look deeper, and that's Pnimius HaTorah. As we get closer and closer to Mashiach, you can look deeper and see that under the surface, even though it looks like we're acting one way, which would trigger the reaction of anger, if you look deeper, so that very action triggers compassion. And this is the way it is interpersonally. A person get angry with their child, right? Because they're whatever, and it happens to all of us all the time. It happens to me all the time, right? If I'm not in this consciousness, which of course I'm not 99% of the time. If a child is misbehaving, a child is not listening, a child is, at whatever age and stage, wherever your children are at, there are two reactions, right? On the surface level, you want to get angry. And then if you can look a little bit deeper, usually there's something underneath this behavior. Usually there's something deeper there. And so how about react, not to the surface level, which is the way that we've lived throughout exile, which is Chitzonius HaTorah, Niklas HaTorah. In Pnimius HaTorah, this kid doesn't need a slap, chas v'shalom. No kid ever needs a slap, chas v'shalom, ever. But this kid doesn't need, I'm just using that as a metaphor, he doesn't need a patch, he needs a hug. You say, how does he need a hug? What are you talking about? He's being rude. He's not listening. And you say, yeah, on the surface, he needs discipline. But b'pnimius HaTorah, he needs compassion. For that very same thing, he needs compassion. We're just trying to get to a particular place. Right? On this very nakuda, he needs compassion. Do you hear? And this has shifted as it's come down, and health from the nations of the world, which is chachma b'goyim tamen, because sometimes they have a little bit of this more bigger picture way of looking at things. It's come down into the way that we deal with quote unquote struggling teens or off the derech teens. Up until the Baal Shem Tov, you threw the kid out of the house, and that was that. Saying what's this business? He's not lining up. He's not living in accordance with our values, and so forget it. We have to accommodate. And famously, one of the earliest sources that we have with regard to this kind of thing, when somebody came to the Baal Shem Tov with a son who was struggling, a child who was struggling, and asked the Baal Shem Tov what to do, what did the Baal Shem Tov answer? Love him even more. It's a whole paradigm shift. But now we're understanding that it's literally connected and aligned with the general shift of the consciousness of Pnimius HaTorah and Geula, which began with Rashbi and then culminated in another Rashbi, who was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem. Both were Rashbi. Both are Indian of Chai. Chai Elul, Chai Iyar. Chai. They brought things to life. And then that was nishtalshal down to like Rabbi Kalish from Waterbury, which is his whole mahalach. If you want to really listen to an amazing tzaddik, look up Rabbi Kalish. You listen to some of his. You want to hear Kalish, Rabbi Daniel Kalish. He just did a remarkable podcast with Nachi Gordon for Meaningful Minute on a Pesach program. They did like a live interview set. It is chayav lishma. Like it's a must listen, but really must for every parent and every educator. I mean, he is doing it. Mamish doing it. So Rabbi Avi Fishoff, if you know Rabbi Avi Fishoff, Twisted Parenting, Kesher Nafshi, all this stuff, it's all the Baal Shem. It's the consciousness of the Baal Shem Tov that beroiges, instead of reacting to the surface, and therefore maybe you'll put a Band-Aid on it, but it won't heal the issue. This is a dar of healing. Go deeper. Rachim Tizkar. Now, according to this interpretation of what we just learned, go back to the beginning of the Torah, which spoke about the tachlis of the tachlis of the tachlis. It's one thing. When a person looks at the stimulus to a reaction of someone, let's use this example of a child misbehaving, and then we want to respond. What's the tachlis of our response? Right? And this is how deep it is. What's the tachlis? What's the tachlis of what's taking place in this dynamic? If the tachlis is shut up, and I can continue with my night, so that because just go to bed. If that's the tachlis, so cool. But that's Pnimius. I'm sorry, that's on the surface, and maybe the kid will go to bed. But that was never what this was about. And this is the cause for emotions that get repressed, and never get talked about, and never get worked through, etc., etc., etc. And then you have, disconnect between parents and children because the whole relationship is just on the surface, and it was all about utility, And so when I can get something out of you, great, and if not, so then you're in my way. But from the standpoint of Pnimius HaTorah, where there's nothing in our way, everything is our way, it is our way, it is my way, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything Hashem does for me is literally for my best, and that this is the Shashoy Adam Haba, because Kolma Erosav Hen L'Tavasei, and so every single thing, the most frustrating, annoying, difficult, Yeridas, and different experiences in my life, etc., and growing up, and maybe with parents who weren't of this consciousness, which is true for many people, that everything is my way, that everything is there to help me. So then, this is a huge opportunity right now. It's an opportunity for connection. It's an opportunity to actually get into, pop the hood and go underneath and find out what's going on here. And then, we don't just put Band-Aids on things and take care of the issue, because it's not an issue, it's a doorway. It's a portal. It's an embrace that's being offered. It's not an issue to be solved. It's not an issue. There's no issues. There's nothing in this world that's an issue, because there's nowhere that we're going. Whatever we're experiencing is exactly what there is. There's nothing else. Everything else is an illusion. The past is gone. The future is not around. All that's real is in the moment. If we are present in the moment, if we're present in the present and we receive it as a present, right? If we mamash live like it's a gift, so then there's nothing to get out of your way because you're going somewhere else. You're just here. And in that moment, with presence of mind and consciousness, one able, obviously, if a person's running to a meeting, whatever, you'll hand it off or you'll figure it out, right? But in that moment, a person has to check in with themselves. I'm feeling a reaction. Is that coming from my neshama, pnimius, or is that the lower part of the nefesh habahamis chitzonius? 90% of the time, nefesh habahamis chitzonius. And the kid does not need shouting. The kid does not need discipline. The kid does not need punishments. The kid does not need consequences. Usually what the kid needs is a hug. Usually there's fear underneath. Usually there's some kind of anxiety underneath. Usually there's something that's bothering that you can work through. Usually, maybe if a kid is misbehaving, something happened in school that day that he didn't tell you about, and maybe usually it's something much deeper. And so now it's not just psychologists that need to be psychologists, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu imbued into the culture a deeper way of considering the way that people function. And teachers need to onboard this perspective, parents need to onboard this perspective, friends need to onboard this perspective. And this is called, if you want a pasuk for it, and then we'll wrap it up for today, the pasuk says, amazing pasuk, that the whole teichacha, chas v'shalom, all the curses that are in the Torah will come upon us, tachas asher lo avadatas Hashem lekecha b'simcha v'tov leva. Because of this, that we haven't served HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and a good heart. That alone, just on a simple level, is like a remarkable thing. Like, it's clearly a pasuk. You were serving God, you did everything right, but you didn't do it with passion. Okay, pretty clear source, for the Baal Shem Tov's whole big push. Like, it's mamish, the whole Torah depends on this. But I want to say something deeper. I believe it's Ramosh of Kabriner. I think it's a Torah from Ramosh of Kabrin, where he said a story. He said that there was and again, I can't remember what I say to who, so if you heard this from me, please forgive me. It's just chazara that Ramosh of Kabrin said that there was a child whose teacher was teaching them the aleph beis with the vowels, right? They call them helpers here. Is that universal in all the schools, or just in Noam? Where my kid goes, no, they call them helpers. I thought that was so beautiful. I don't call them like vowels or nakudas, helpers. They help the word. Beautiful. And also true al pi pnimius, because the nakudas are the neshama, and the letters are the body, and the neshama does indeed help the body. So this kid was learning the letters with the nakudas, and the teacher brought in the teacher was going around and he was sitting with each of the students to make sure that they had like a bechina test. And so he's pointing to this, what's under, he kept on saying, what's under the gimel? He said, ge, as a segal, so it makes the ge sound. What's under the dalbit, da? There was a kamat. And then he points to it and he says, what's under the hay? And the kid is silent. So he's getting frustrated. He says, "What's under the hay?" Maybe didn't hear him. What's under the hay? Silent again and again and again. Tell me what's on Maishla, or whatever his name was. Yankel, tell me what's under the hay. Silent. So the Rebbe gets so frustrated that he calls the dad in, and he tells the dad he got to come into school the next day. And the dad says, "What's the issue?" And he says, "Yankel will not tell me. He's not listening to me. I'm trying to administer this test, and he won't tell me what's under the letter hay." And so the father said, "Let me see. What are you talking about?" He knows his nekudas very well. So they sit together, and the kid is sitting there, and it goes again. What's under the aleph? He answers. What's under the gimel? What's under the dalet? All these he gets right. He says, "What's under the hay?" And he's silent. And the father gets mamish upset. He says, "Answer, like it's chutzpah. Answer him." He says, "That what's under the hay?" So the kid looks up to his dad, and he says, "You really want me to tell him what's under the hay?" He says, "Yes. What's under the hay?" He said, "Under the hay is where you hid the goat that you stole." Under the hay at home in the barn, that's where the goat is hiding that you stole from the neighbor. That's what's under the hay. So Moshe of Kabrin said, this pasuk tachas asher lo yavadatas Hashem lekecha b'simcha v'tov leva is a strange thing. It could have said mipnei, right? Because you haven't served Hashem. What's tachas? So the Kabriner said it was never about the fact that we didn't serve God with joy. It was about what's tachas that. What is underneath? Because not serving God with joy is a symptom. What's tachat? What's under the hay, right? What's hiding beyond this that a person isn't able to serve Hashem with simcha? That's what the teichacha comes. Not because we didn't serve God with joy. That's true. But what's underneath it?
Why?
The why. The tachlis. The deeper, the truth. The real reality. So the tzaddikim are giving us a consciousness of Olam Haba, which is tachlis-oriented consciousness. We're not living on the surface anymore. We have to go deeper. And this is the consciousness of Shashui Olam Haba, which each of us can receive from the tzaddik in as much as we ourselves are beginning to embody this trait by swapping out our roiges with rachem, by tizkar, by remembering this person was once a child. This person is essentially sweet and holy. This person is a chelik al-kamimal. Even if things don't look that way now, tizkar. Dig deep into the person's past. Why is the person behaving this way? Don't judge another person until you're in their shoes. Who knows what this person went through as a child? Who knows what this person's missing? Who knows what this person's going through? V'chule tizkar. And then, instead of reacting to situations beroiges, we're going to be able to swap it out for rachim. When we do that, we're plugged into the consciousness of the tzaddik who doesn't just look at the surface. Oh, this guy's building a table. Why is he building a table? And it doesn't suffice with that. Why does he want money? Why? This is the consciousness of Kehal Yedidim. Thank you so much.
והאב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני